My name is Kairise Conwell. I am a career advisor here at Lake Sumter State College, and today I will be talking about writing an effective resume. So first you want to think about why would you want to write a resume and why would it need to be effective? Well, it's part of the overall job search process, which starts well before you're ready to search for that job. It starts with research. That's a really important first step because you really need to understand about the career field that you have chosen. What are the big top name companies in that career field? What's the going salary for some of the positions within your career field? What are the different type of industries that you can work in? So doing your research is going to be really vital. The next step in the job search process is preparation. And I can't stress this enough. This is really what Career Development Services is all about, is helping you as a student be prepared for that job search once you complete your education. So with preparation, you want to make sure that you have a great resume, that you have tailored it to that specific job that you're applying to, and that you've actually looked at your cover letter and practiced interviewing skills. So that all goes into the preparation portion. The next step in the job search process is network. And again, this process starts well before you're ready to look for a job or need a job. So developing your professional network is going to really help you once you get to that point and you're looking for a position, whether it's transitioning from one job to another or just transitioning within your company to a different position. There's a number of different ways that you can network, and with online opportunities such as LinkedIn, it really makes it easy. The last step of the job search process is, of course, the actual search. You want to create a plan that will help you organize the positions that you are applying to, the deadlines to complete your application, making sure you contact references so that they know they may be contacted, and all that good stuff. So each of these areas our office can assist you with, but today we're going to focus on resumes. So what is a resume? Most people know generally what a resume looks like, but what really is that? The resume is the first step in the application process. It's important to make a great first impression. It also is important to edit and re-edit and have someone look at it because you don't want to have any spelling or grammatical errors. So it's important that you get really great feedback on your resume. It summarizes your qualifications and experiences as they relate to the position you are seeking. So how do you ensure your resume will be looked at? You want to make sure that you do very basic steps, and we will talk about some of those things as we go along. But essentially, a resume is a marketing tool. It's very difficult for us to market our own selves. It's easy to talk about another person or another object or another service or program, but when it comes to ourselves, it's a little bit more difficult to talk about ourselves. But that's exactly what you need to be able to articulate with your resume, cover letter, and when you interview, because you really want to make it easy for that hiring manager to see you in that role. The purpose is to move you to the next step in the job search process, which is the interview. The interview is important because at that point, they really get to feel your personality. You're also able to really show why you're a fit, not just the words on the paper. So a good resume demonstrates your qualification. It also helps the employer see you in the position. And of course, it leaves them wanting to know more about you. So let's talk about the difference between a resume and a cover letter. It's very easy to get the two mixed up, and people tend to not know what to include in a cover letter and A lot of times they just regurgitate what's on the resume. So really, let's talk about the distinction between the two. So with the resume, you want to highlight your skills and qualifications. Versus in the cover letter, the purpose is to demonstrate knowledge of the company and the reason for your interest. Remember, we talked about the first step of the job search process is the research. So this is where that comes into play. Your resume is going to give a summary of your experience. It's going to be in a more bulleted format, much like a checklist. The cover letter, on the other hand, really is to showcase your fit with the organization and really have your personality show through, and it uses a business letter format. So the resume is going to be written in the third person. None of the statements should begin with I or anything of that nature. A cover letter, on the other hand, is written in the first person. So as you can tell, there are clear distinctions between the structure and the intent of the two documents. So make sure that you view your cover letter and resume as complementary to each other, but unique pair of documents. So we're going to do a little exercise. Imagine for a moment that you are an employer looking to hire someone to work in the field of customer service. You just had 2 people quit and are shorthanded and really need to bring a person on board quickly. There are 2 candidates that your team has narrowed the search down to. So I want you to take a look at Lake Hawk Student 1 and Lake Hawk Student 2. 30 seconds to review each candidate and let me know who you are hiring. Which one did you say? Lake Hawk Student 1 or Lake Hawk Student 2? I imagine most of you would hire Lake Hawk Student 2. If you notice, Lake Hawk Student 1 has a lot of personal information on his resume that typically is a little distracting. If you notice in his contact, it has a lot of his social media and not a professional handle. He has an objective statement to get a job at the company, which is not very impressive. He does have his education listed and work experience. However, if you notice that there's different size fonts, different size bullet points, and the format is not consistent. Then he also mentioned different personal hobbies such as playing hockey or liking puppies, which really has nothing to do with the job. So it's a lot of information on here that is not useful to a hiring manager. Lake Hawk Student 2, on the other hand, uses a professional email. At the top, you're able to see very quickly key bullet points of their skill set, and you can see if they match easily or not to what you're looking for. Their education, as well as the work experience and the rest of the document, is consistent in its format. You can see some of the relevant classes that this student has taken that might help them with the job that you have. You're also able to really see clearly not just where they worked and what the position was, but really what were some of those responsibilities and job tasks that you might be able to gather whether they would be a fit with your company or with that position. You also are able to see their honors and awards, their activities, and so everything is very clear and upfront, very easy to distinguish. So if you said you would hire Lake Hawk Student 2, you definitely, probably because of the format. Did you notice who had the higher GPA? Maybe or maybe not. But Lake Hawk Student 1 actually had a higher GPA than Lake Hawk Student 2. So even though you may have a high GPA, your format of your resume really makes a difference. So what drives a resume's content? What really should you put on a resume? We were going to talk about how you need some guidelines to follow and instructions when you're posting positions or posting your application. But how do you know what really you should include on your resume? There's a lot of different content that can be included. Your contact information, of course, your education and relevant coursework. But many students don't think about your project or internship experience. Sometimes you don't think about the volunteer service that you have done. And a lot of students don't even include their military experience. So these are all different things that you can have on your resume. But how do you really know which of these are important to put on there and which ones perhaps can be left off? Well, you want to think about employability skills. So again, when you think about the first step of the job search process and your research, you really want to have a clear understanding for your career field. What are those group of essential abilities that you need to do your job? So there's soft skills and hard skills. The hard skills are those teachable abilities. Those are the skills you're learning in your program, whether it's specific knowledge, theories, equations. Those are all things that you are learning. Soft skills, on the other hand, those are a little bit difficult to really teach someone. But those are the ability to work with people, having a positive attitude, and dependability. All of those are essential when an employer is looking to hire someone. So you have to think about, for your particular career, what is going to be those necessary hard and soft skills that an employer may look for. So what employers generally seek on a resume are problem-solving skills and teamwork abilities. They also want to see evidence of written communication skills, leadership abilities, and a strong work ethic. Now, many of you may wonder, well, how would I be able to put that on a resume? I haven't even held a job before. Well, that's where your project, your class project, maybe you've worked together on a team project, that is where that would come in. Maybe there's something you've learned on your internship that can work towards communication or some of your leadership. Maybe you're involved in a student organization or you help to coordinate an event at your church. All of those are other ways that you can demonstrate these skill sets that an employer looks for. So those should definitely be on your resume. Internship experience with the organization is really a top factor that influences employers when they're trying to decide between two equally qualified candidates, followed by whether the candidate has internship experience within the same industry. So that lets you know that doing an internship experience is really important. It gives you those skills that employers look for, and it gives you an opportunity to say, hey, I do have that ability to do the job that you're looking for. Other attributes that employers seek and look for on a resume is, are you able to take initiative? Are you flexible? How well do you get along with others and relate to others and communicate with them? How well are you organized? Do you have the technical and computer skills needed? Do you have strategic planning skills? Are you detail oriented? All of these are skills that really makes a person employable, because the specific skills, they can teach you how to do that. Remember, the hard skills are those teachable things. These are really more those soft skills that employers want someone to come. So you really have to make sure that you develop those. So there are different ways that you can build those skills. If you notice there's any that you don't really have a lot of experience in or knowledge of, you can do that by joining student clubs and organizations, and then going into leadership roles such as chairing an event or coordinating a big project. Also, volunteering around the community. A lot of times there's a lot of great opportunities that students are doing and don't realize how those skills can transfer into employability skills. Also, joining a professional association will also not just give you those skills, but also help you with your research and networking with professionals in that career field. A lot of them have student memberships, and they definitely have professional development opportunities such as conferences where you may even be able to find a job or an internship. We already talked about how important internships are, but again, they're vital in helping you build those necessary skills, just like part-time jobs and even job shadowing. So look for ways that you can work on building your skills. So here are some guidelines to follow when putting together your resume. So you want to think about what an employer is going to look for. You don't want them to have to search for information. You want to make it easy for them. So you want to customize your resume to highlight qualification for each different position that you are applying for. Use keywords from job descriptions. The job descriptions are written usually by the supervisor. That's usually what guides what they're looking for when they review resumes. So you want to use some of the same wording. Also, be sure that you don't have any misspellings or grammatical errors. We already talked about how important written communication skills are to an employer, and that's the first impression they have of your written communication skills, your cover letter and resume. You also want to use an easy-to-read format. Most people focus on the attention grabbing and they use borders or pictures or different colors, but really that distracts an employer from really being able to focus in on the skills and abilities that you bring. So you want to make sure that you keep it professional. Use bullet points and headers to kind of break up the reading, and limit your resume to one page if you can. If you have a lot of direct work experience, you may have 2 pages, but it's very hard to get all the information in. So it's okay that not everything makes it into the resume, which means you have to decide what is the most important features that you want to convey. Nowadays, most resumes are submitted electronically. So that means they have a system that you have to upload your resume to. So therefore, when you upload your resume, some templates are hard to be recognized, or the alignment and formatting is off. So it's best not to use a template. I know there's tons of templates out there and it makes it really easy to know. You just plug in your information, but using a simple Word document is the best. You want to avoid borders and lines and stick to basic bullet points and symbols. I know our computer technology, there's all sorts of ways that we can use as bullet points and headers and font styles, but simple is the best, okay? So when you submit a hard copy, you also want to make sure that even if you deliver or hand a recruiter a hard copy of your resume, you probably still will have to fill out an application online. But you want to make sure that your resume is printed on nice paper. It doesn't have to be super fancy paper or any particular stock, but you want to print it as opposed to photocopy, because sometimes photocopies, they're smudges from the copy machine. Maybe it's not aligned right. So it's best to just print each new page. Also, if you have 2 pages to your resume, do not staple the pages together. When it comes to the format of your resume, you want to make sure that it's easy for an employer to logically flow through your resume. Remember, they receive a lot of different resumes and they may only scan for 30 seconds. So you want to make sure that as they're scanning your resume, it's very simple for them to flow. So you want to organize the information in a chronological, organized fashion, but you want to organize it in reverse, which means your most recent work experience or your most recent education should be listed first, and then you work your way backwards listing other experiences. You also can organize your resume by functional area. So if you really want to highlight that you have great customer service and great management experience, and also another key functional area like maybe computer skills, you can also organize your resume that way. Make sure that you don't play around too much with the font or the margins, because you want it to be fairly standard. I know sometimes we try to play with that when we're trying to fit in a lot of information or try to stretch little information to make it fill the page. But margins should be no smaller than 1/2 inch. And make sure that you use pretty common typeface such as Arial or Verdana or New Roman, because anything fancier than that may be, again, depending on the system that an employer has for you to upload your resume, may not be recognized. They may not have that font, and you would hate for it to really mess up your resume to the employer. Also, your name should be the largest and in boldface text on the page. You definitely want your contact information to stand out. So let's talk about your contact information. It should be at the top of the page and look balanced. So think about your how you want to word your phone number, how you want to place your email, and what address you're using. Sometimes students are hesitant about putting their full address on their resume. Employers still look for that on there. So my encouragement is to still put an address, definitely a city and state. If you are really nervous about putting a full address, then perhaps getting a P.O. box. That way you at least have a mailing address. But when you're putting your address on a resume, remember you're not uploading to sort of a job board such as Indeed or Employ Florida. You really want to just make sure it goes straight to the employer. When you have a telephone number, you want to use just one number, not a home and a cell phone and then your work number. You just want to have one phone number. And whatever phone number you provide, you might want to check your voicemail just to make sure that it's professional. Your email address, make sure that it's one that you check often. I actually created a whole separate email just for professional emails that I need to send so that it doesn't get mixed up in all the spam and junk mail and the other offers that I get in my regular email. But you definitely want to make sure that it's professional. So don't include a photo or any other personal information that an employer could use against you in their decision for that position. There's a lot of protected information that an employer cannot ask and they cannot discriminate against. However, if you open that door and provide that information, then they are allowed to ask about it. So you don't want to indicate anything regarding your age, gender, marital status, or any other conditions that may be really personal. Now, there may be exceptions when it comes to your Social Security number. There are certain applications that you have to put that in there. A lot of federal government positions, if you have to do a CV to work outside the United States, and certain specific career fields may require that. But in general, that they will ask for that information on the actual application itself, so you don't have to include it on the actual resume. So now we want to take a look at the worksheet and begin to start to flesh out your own resume. If you already have a resume, that's great. You can begin with that. But I have also included a simple worksheet that will allow you to look at the format and plug in some things to practice. So here's the worksheet. Your contact information goes at the top, so we don't have to worry about that. But let's look at the first section, the summary of skills. For the type of position that you are interested in going into, or the career, or maybe your current position, what are just 3 bullet points that you would put to summarize your skills? Next, you want to fill in your education. It's already pre-filled for Lake Sumter State College because you're here doing a program. But if you have other college experience, don't forget, you will still add that on there. It just would come after Lake Sumter since Lake Sumter is your most recent experience. Think about those relevant courses to your career field that you're taking here in your program. You wouldn't want to list like English or philosophy, but you want to list those specific classes for your program. Also, your work experience, you want to list on here your name of the company where you work at with the location, followed by the actual job title of your position with the dates that you work. Remember to put your most recent at the top. So if you currently are in a position or you are looking to work, or maybe you just ended your job last month and that's the only job, the last position you held, that would be listed first, and then you work your way backwards. So take a few minutes to actually start to fill this in, or look at your current resume to see where you would hold up with that. So with the summary of skills section, was that difficult for you to think of what you would put in there? Well, most people think of an objective statement, and that's sort of the old way that people had their resumes. But an objective statement really doesn't give the employer much, because essentially you're stating the obvious. You're interested in a position in your career field. Nowadays, cover letters are standard, and so really what you would put in a great objective statement, you'll include in your cover letter. So a better way to kind of highlight right at the top of your resume is sort of your skills and qualifications. That can include specific technical skills such as computer or operating programs. Maybe you speak a different language. That might be really key for your career field, especially if they're looking for someone who's bilingual. That would be right at the top of the page. If you have really great experience in public speaking, or maybe any other relevant experience such as in customer service or exceptional, standards in a particular credential area. Those are things you want right at the top. So think of ways that you can be concise and have those bullet points. Your education section, that should be fairly easy for students to put on their resume, but really the formatting is what helps that to stand out. You want to list the university first, along with the location, which is the city and the state. On the next line, you want to have your degree, and make sure you spell that out. Don't use abbreviations. You don't want to assume that someone will know what you're talking about. They may confuse that with a different meaning. Then you can put either the month and the date that you graduated and finished, or if it's coming up, you would just put expected, then put the month and the year that you expect to finish the program. Now the GPA, that's not required. So don't feel like you have to put that on the resume. And really, once you graduate and you're kind of out of college for a couple of years, you really should not have that on there. Also, the work 20 hours, that's not necessary to have on your resume either, although it is something that you could have stand out if you would like. We already talked about putting relevant coursework on there, so just make sure that you include that under this section so that it's clear that those courses are what you took at that particular institution. Next come your work experience, and don't forget you can include your internships. So depending on how much work experience you have, if you don't have a lot of actual jobs that you've worked, you could just put experience, and that way you can include volunteer, internships, or just projects that you've worked on. It doesn't necessarily mean it was a job you were paid for. However, if you do have some work experience, you can title that section however you'd like. And just like with your education, you're going to put it in reverse chronological order. So your most recent first. You're going to include the company name as well as the location of that company. You're going to put your job title on the second line along with the dates that you worked. And then you're going to have your main responsibilities and bullet points. Remember, you can't include every single thing on a resume, so you really want to pick out those really important job tasks that you did. Think about the job description and what they're looking for, and what are those key employability skills for your career field, and focus on those areas. You want to start each bullet point with an action verb, and make sure that you're concise. You don't want to have a big long paragraph. And if you can add any sort of success or quantify your duties, then that makes an even stronger impact. So let's look at how to put together your bullet point. This is where I know it's very difficult to kind of get the wording just right. So if I was a teacher and I was putting on my resume, of course, the verb, which you should start your bullet points about, a strong verb, is taught, right? That's the main thing that a teacher does is teach. But consider adding a description. With that description, it's I teach inner city high school students. That kind of describes the context of where I teach. But then when you add the result, which is they earn the highest scores in the district on English assessment, do you see how much of a stronger impact that has perhaps to that employer who's looking to hire me on? Not just, yeah, they teach, of course, they're a teacher, but that the fact that they got this particular population and increased their scores really makes a statement. So let's look at an example of how you would put your experience. So again, notice how not the college, my bad, but notice how you have the employer on the first line with the location, and on the second line you have the position, and you really want that to stand out, so put that in bold. Just like with your education, you want the degree program to stand out, so you'll put that in bold. And then you want to put down, notice the bullet points: assist, maintain, provide. Those are all verbs. So again, you want to start each bullet point, if you can, with the verb to really make your statement. Make sure that the verb is in the correct tense. So if you have a position that you still are currently in, you would use the present tense of that verb. But make sure for all past positions that you use the former tense, the past tense. So not assist staff, assisted staff. Not maintain log, but maintained. Okay, so just make sure you pay attention. Remember, those small grammatical errors make a difference. Now, if you were in the military and have military experience, it can be tough to figure out how exactly do you word that on your resume. So you do have a couple of different ways that you can put that on the resume. The most simple is to list it under your work experience, or to have a whole separate section that's titled military experience, especially for a lot of employers that really have a veteran preference or really look for veterans for their positions. It'll help that to stand out even more. So if you have military experience, make sure that you try to think about all the different roles that you had and responsibilities and describe it in civilian terms. I know it's tough, but that's where sometimes working with a career advisor or just another person will really help you to see things that just come naturally in trying to describe what you did, that a civilian person may not understand exactly what that means. So you really want to try to think about, well, what would it be the closest equivalent to? And that's how you want to describe it. So in this example, you see that it's organized by functional area. So management and leadership, operations and logistics, communications management. So it helps that person to organize all the different areas that they have worked at and kind of helps it to be organized by functional area. That might be easy for someone to do. You can also list your military experience by putting it under leadership. So if you held a leadership position, then definitely consider how you can list that under a separate section under leadership, or any honors and affiliation. Now, moving on to the activity section. Again, this is not required on a resume. Not everybody has participated with an activity. Another way that you can list this section is volunteer experience or volunteer activity. So again, this is all optional, but again, you want to think about what are those extracurricular activities, whether it's a student organization or volunteer work, that might highlight leadership roles or other great employability skills that maybe your work experience doesn't highlight. So make sure it's relevant to the position, and if you can list a leadership role that you've held, that's even better than just listing that you were on the fishing club. So an example of how you would list it is if you were president of the Student Government Association, and then you would list the time frame. Or if you were an event volunteer for the March of Dimes, again, you list the dates that you did that. Also, what sometimes is forgotten off of a resume are those license or certifications. A lot of our Associate of Science programs here at Lake Sumter has really great certifications already built into the program. So if you have certifications, then definitely make sure that's listed. It could be its own section. And then if you are in certain career fields, you definitely should list those special licenses and certifications that is going to be necessary for you to do the job. So to sum it up, you want to make sure that you're getting someone to look at your resume. Your resume really is your marketing tool, and you want to make it nice and simple and easy for an employer to find the information that they are looking for when trying to determine if you're a fit for their organization. Okay, so make sure it's simple and easy to read typeface. You want to proofread your spelling, grammar, and also your tone. And you want to make sure that you organize your resume so that it flows logical. And you want to be consistent in your format. You don't want to have anything that really detracts from your skills that you want to showcase. And a great way to have that proofread is to submit your resume to Career Development Services. We do resume critiques. You would actually upload your resume to our Lake Hawk Career Connect, which the information on that service is on our website. But you can also make an appointment and we can go through your resume. And we have a lot of other great workshops and tips and also ways to help you. Remember the research and the preparation. You want to also think about your cover letter. You also want to think about interviewing, so we can help do a mock interview, also help you with networking tips. So there's a lot of different services that we offer here with Career Development Services. This is how you access us for an appointment. Typically, we are at the Leesburg campus, 8 to 4:30, as well as Southlake. We have a full-time career advisor at both locations. Our Sumter campus typically will have someone there Wednesday morning, as well as Thursday afternoon, or by appointment. And you can schedule an appointment with the career advisor through Starfish or by calling our main office. You can also go online and email us. And we do have social media, and every third Monday of the month this year, we actually will have our Lunch and Learn series through our Facebook page. Those are under 30 minutes, great career, different topics, and this year we are really focusing in on career exploration. So make sure that you check us out. Hopefully this has helped you to get started on writing your resume, and I'll see your resume for a critique through our Lake Hawk Career Connect. Until then, I'll see you for our next workshop.